Number 1. Creaking. This happened when I was very young. I like to think I was 13 at the time, but I'm not 100% sure. I was an only child, and both of my parents worked, so it was way too often that I was home by myself, even before I was old enough to actually legally be allowed to be home alone. My parents had a whole system. I had a key to the door, and I would arrive home from school. I really enjoyed canned pasta, so that was something I could make for myself and have for dinner in case my parents wouldn't be home in time for dinner, and this was normally the case. If someone came to the door, I just pretended like I wasn't at home. If anyone called, I would let the answering machine pick it up. This was before voicemail. If it was my parents, I would pick it up and talk to them. Otherwise, I would just do my best to not bring any attention to the fact that I was home by myself. This arrangement worked for me for a while, before the incident I'm mentioning in this story. I was walking home from school as usual, but this was the day that I was hurrying my best to get home as quickly as I could. The sky was dark and it was very windy outside. I wanted to make sure that I didn't get caught in the rain. I always hated when that happened, and I hadn't brought an umbrella with me. I did make it home as it was beginning to sprinkle, but I got in before it really got too wet. The problem that I had was it was very dark inside of the house, and I needed to get some homework going. Normally, when I needed some light, I would just turn on the light in the foyer. It was the only light that made sense when I was trying not to call attention to the fact that anyone was home. An hour or two went by as I was doing my work. I had pretty good focus, so I was deep into studying. And that was when I heard some weird creaking noise. It was odd and not something I had ever heard before. I looked around the room, trying to determine what it was. But it was a momentary distraction, and I figured it was probably just as simple as the house settling or something. So I was sitting on the couch doing my homework, with my book in my lap. Hell, I even remember what I was reading about. It was psychology. We were supposed to be doing a report on a subject that we thought we would want to have a career in. I don't know why, but for some reason, I got the urge to look up at the front door. The couch was directly facing it, and when I looked up there, I noticed the strangest thing. I couldn't immediately make out what was wrong, but when my eyes adjusted to the light and the distance, I felt myself go cold inside. The mail slot on the front door was open, and someone was looking through it, watching me. It was the strangest, creepiest thing, and I didn't know how to react. Their eyes were lined up with mine, and I don't know how long that lasted. What I did know, however, was that it was at least 10 minutes since I had heard the creaking noise, which had to have been this person opening up the mail slot, and furthermore, that whomever was looking at me knew that I was home alone. I didn't know what to do, but I guess my body or something did. Inexplicably, I yelled, "Dad! Someone's watching me through the door!" Immediately, the mail slot clacked as it closed, and then I saw a figure rise up through the glass of the door. I was scared that whomever it was would break through the glass, so I froze, staring. Instead, I watched the person retreat from the porch. Although I was scared, I ran up to the door and looked out the window. I was able to see the guy running away from me. I guess calling for my dad worked. But then I did go and call my dad. But gosh, this was really such a creepy and strange thing to happen. Some weirdo watching a kid through the mail slot in their door. It was just a nasty and creepy thing. Ever since, whenever I was home alone, I would turn on all the lights to make it seem like the whole family was home. I never found out who was watching me, but thankfully, they never returned. Number 2. Graveyard. When I was in high school, I was going through a lot. I guess everyone does, but I didn't really know that at the time. I think it was hard on me, though, because my family moved very often, so I didn't have any long-term friends. I made friends wherever I went, but it takes a while to really warm up to people. So I spent a lot of time not sleeping at night, lost in my thoughts. And when I couldn't sleep, I would go for a long walk. This was during the summertime. I don't really remember why I was depressed, but I was down in the dumps. And because of this, or maybe because we didn't have good AC in the house, I was having trouble going to sleep. After tossing and turning for a while, I decided to get up and go for a walk. I'll never forget how hot it was that night, and how quiet it was outside. The town we were living in was pretty small. It was one of those one-stoplight towns where nothing stayed open after 8 p.m. I didn't wear a watch, so I never really knew how long I would be out for my walks. Most of the time, I would just look down at my feet as I was deep in thought, so quite a bit of time could pass before I even knew it. I walked all the way down to the train station and looked around there for a while. It was a station that didn't have an agent or anything, just a standalone building. On the way there and on the way back, I had to pass by a graveyard. It didn't bother me at all, I didn't believe in ghosts or anything paranormal, so I didn't get scared or hold my breath or anything weird like that when I walked by it. On the way home, I was crossing by the graveyard. I wasn't paying attention to it, but something caught the corner of my eye. Looking over at it, I noticed there was someone sitting in the cemetery on a gravestone, and he was waving at me. "Hey! Psst! Come over here!" He invited me once he saw me looking. I couldn't make out much detail about him because there were, of course, no lights in the cemetery, but he was waving at me. He once again invited me over, which was so weird, and I just probably paused due to the strangeness of it all. But then I decided to just walk on as if I didn't notice him, although it was painfully obvious that I did. As I kept walking, he kept calling me, trying to get my attention back. But I did my best to ignore it as much as I could and go on. I jerked my head back a few times to look and see if he was following me. But he wasn't. He was still just sitting on the gravestone, trying to get my attention. I hurried the rest of the way home, constantly looking over my shoulder. I kept expecting him to be coming after me. Who sits on a gravestone in the middle of the night, much less thinks they can get someone to come over to them? It was weird and creepy as hell. I don't know. I made it home no problem, but wow, did that spook me. And whenever I went out for a walk for a while, I would take a route that didn't pass the graveyard. Number 3. After the game. Okay, there might be some people out there who don't think this is true, but I guarantee you that it 100% is. It seems outlandish and probably even like the plot for a horror movie or a BDSM story or something, but it happened to me, and it will really put a focus on how totally evil people can be. First off, my name is Chip, and yeah, I'm not kidding. That is my actual name. I'm a bit older right now. I'm hovering around 50 years old. Being born in the 70s, I think a lot of us got some pretty weird names. I guess I'm lucky I didn't end up as Corey. This story, though, actually takes place in the 80s. It happened when I was a teenager in high school. I realized I was gay around the time that I was 13 years old. It was a harder realization back then than it is now. Not to offend younger people, who many still have a difficult time with it, but in general there was no acceptance or support system back then. Watch some 80s movies and see how gays are portrayed. It's pretty bad. I had a very tough time due to the area that I lived in. It was a very rural area, and I know that a lot of them have progressed nowadays too, but it was very bad when I was in high school. I had a similar experience, I think, to someone I've heard in a previous scary story. When I got to school, I was absolutely terrified to take a shower with a bunch of other guys. At 16 years old, a guy can get excited by watching the wind blow on a dandelion. Being in an open shower with 40 other naked guys, man, I didn't want to take a chance with that at all. Looking back on the subject now, I honestly don't think it would have been a problem. The absolute fear I had that I would be found out would probably have killed any arousal problems I had. But I didn't know that back then. I was just scared. So I told the gym teacher that I was gay, and that I didn't think the other guys wanted to shower with a gay guy. He was surprisingly nice about it, or at least it seemed that way. My opinion of him changed when it became obvious that he told other people. At first it was just looks and laughing at me, but it was easy for me to know that they were doing that because I was gay. There were guys shaking their dicks at me in the locker room and things like that, and the whole situation was always uncomfortable. After a while of the minor things like that, it began getting actually worse. It didn't take long for me to be known as the school fag, and honestly, I began regretting the whole thing. Getting an erection in the shower would probably not have been as bad as the torment I endured after. And the worst thing happened to me when I was 16 years old, and that is the story I'm really telling. This was in the fall. I remember vividly because there was a high school football game that night, and yeah, I attended it. A lot of the guys who tormented me were on the team, and really, most of the people in the school left me alone, so I was able to sit in the back of the bleachers and watch the game without really being bugged too much about it. The bad thing was that my ride had to leave before the game was over. I didn't even know it at the time, and it took me a while to realize that I had to walk home. And that was going to be a bit of a walk, actually. It was dark. I recall walking in town and getting teased by some of the people in the cars. A guy in a car yelled out, "I'll give you a ride for a blowjob." I was mostly fine, though, until I got on the country roads. It was darker there, and there were less cars. That was something I had been looking forward to. But all that changed when two vehicles were driving down the road. One was a pickup truck, and the other was a car. And the vehicles were filled with the guys who played football and tormented the hell out of me. I couldn't even run because I didn't know what was happening until the pickup truck stopped and blocked my way ahead, with the car blocking my way behind. The guys got out of the vehicles. I was scared to death. It was dark on a country road and I had nowhere to run. I really thought they were just trying to scare me at first, you know. They got out of the truck and car and they surrounded me. And I was terrified, but I did my best not to show it. But it got back regardless. First there were some verbal torments. A lot of them I cannot repeat, but a lot of them were about making me take a shower with them. So they decided that since Chip had never showered with them, that they were going to take me and make me shower with them. The guys grabbed me. I struggled, although I knew there was no way it was going to help. Several of them pulled me over to the truck, and I kept struggling to get away. When they put me in the truck, I tried to get out of it, but they got sick of my attempts pretty quickly. "Strip him naked right now," one of the guys suggested. "That'll keep him from trying to get away." And they did. Well, they stripped me down to my boxers. Literally ripped my clothes off. One of the guys took my wallet out of the pocket of my torn-up jeans and threw it on the truck cab. Then the guys took me to the bed of the truck. Their ploy worked. If I tried to get out of the truck now, while it was moving, I would really get hurt without my clothes to protect me. Plus, it would take nearly no effort to rip my boxers off and leave me naked outside. That was simply something that I did not want. I was in the corner of the back of the bed. I was balled up and probably doing my best not to cry. There were 4 guys in the back of the bed watching me, mocking me, and laughing. One of the guys did not talk much, but he kept cleaning his fingernails with a pocket knife. That alone was pretty scary. He kept looking at me while he did it. When we got to the school, the guys grabbed me and pulled me out. They took me over to the locker room shower. Trust me, at that moment, I was not scared of getting aroused at all. That was terrifying. The guys grabbed me and pulled me into the showers. A couple of them actually stripped their shirts and pants off, as to not get them wet, I guess. It was odd, but they held me down and forced me into the water. At first the water was very, very hot. I was scared to death of getting scalded. They wanted to scrub me with a scrub brush, but they didn't have one. They used a hard bristled broom instead. A couple guys had bottles of liquid soap that they squirted me with. It was a nightmare. After a while, even the water went cold, or they turned it to cold. My fear of arousal might have turned to a fear of shrinkage, but honestly, I was so scared I didn't care about being bare-assed at that moment. I was being scrubbed with a broom in a cold shower by 8 jocks, and I was holding my head and crying. When they were done with me, they didn't even wash off all the soap or dry me off. Instead, they took me naked, wet, soaped, and bleeding in places, back out to the pickup truck. They threw me back in the bed again. I cowered in the corner at that point. I was terrified, trying my best not to even look at the people who were tormenting me. But I did see the guy, once again, looking at me, and cleaning his fingernails with his pocket knife. For some reason, he scared me the most. He hadn't touched me or taunted me or anything. He just kept cleaning his nails with that knife, and I was scared it was going to be used on me. They drove me way out into the hills. It was such an overwhelming experience. These 8 guys were doing this all because of me, and I had no idea what they were going to do next. They were driving me out in the country and far away from anyone or anything I knew. After a long while, the truck pulled to the side of the road. "Get him out," one of the jocks ordered. I was pulled out of the truck and then pushed into a gross pile of dead leaves off the side of the road. The guys were uttering all sorts of gay slurs, and I wasn't even hearing them much. I got kicked a few times in the gut, the back, and even the balls. Every time I tried to protect myself, they just kicked harder. Finally, they left me naked and crying, dirty and beaten, out in a pile of leaves way out in the country. I was hurting bad, humiliated, and shattered. I had laid there for a long time. I think I'd just given up. I didn't know what to do. How was I going to find my way home, especially without any clothes? I also didn't even know where I was. And at the time, none of it mattered. I just laid there in the pile of leaves. I don't know how long after it happened, but I heard a car come up the road. I wondered if I should ask for help or just lay there. But the car stopped right where I was, and I heard someone get out. Someone came over and put their hand on me. When I looked at him, I immediately recognized him as a guy who had been cleaning his nails with a pocket knife. I screamed and tried my best to pull away from him. He was alarmed and tried to calm me down. He told me that he wasn't going to hurt me. He wanted to take me home. I didn't believe him at first and still tried to get away, but he grabbed me and gave me a hug, and he said, sternly, "I don't want to hurt you. Think back. I didn't call you any names, and I didn't lay a hand on you. Don't be scared." I eventually gave him the benefit of the doubt. He brought me over to the car and had a towel that he helped to clean me off as much as possible. "I don't have any clothes for you, but you can wear my jacket at least," he told me. "It, won't cover everything, but it'll keep you warm." He put me in the passenger seat, and we began driving after a while. He talked to me again. "I'm sorry I didn't do anything to help you, but 2 guys against 7 is just really not going to work," he explained. I kept my knife out, though, the entire time, just in case anyone was going to try and kill you or anything. I wasn't going to let them do that. But if I helped you, they would have beaten the shit out of me, too, and we both would have been left out in the woods. I knew once this was over, I could get my car and get you." He paused. "I'm sorry I didn't do more. I just thought this was the way that I could help the most. I thought about how scared I was when he had that knife out. It changed my perspective a lot, and I realized it was there to protect me." "Why are you helping me?" I asked him. "I just don't understand this shit," he told me. "My dad is always talking about fags all the time, and I just don't understand why people have an issue with it. I don't. I think we should just treat each other well. When the guys saw you at the game and wanted to come after you, I knew I couldn't stop them. But I thought at least I could make sure you got home. He actually didn't drive me home. He drove me to his house. He let me take a shower and get cleaned up. He even helped clean my wounds and gave me some clothes. I can't have you going home all naked and covered in dirt and leaves, he told me. Oh, and I saved this. He handed me my wallet. Someone left it in the cab of the pickup truck. It was the weirdest night of my life. I experienced both the best of people and the worst of people in the same night, and it was only because of this new guy, Johnny, that I got the nerve to go back to school. I did miss a few days, telling my family that I was sick, but I knew I had to eventually go back. The tormenting continued for a while, but Johnny hung out with me, however, and that really helped me get not picked on as much as I had been before. He was known as a kind of tough country boy and had respect. Oh, and he always carried that pocket knife in his front pocket. Everyone could always see the bulge of the pocket knife, you purrs. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to click the subscribe button and bell below, or click the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment, and share this video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.